Welcome back, folks. It is snowing again. Crazy weather. But we're kind of used to it here. I'm just a hot mess today. I've got an old sweatshirt on. I got a sweatshirt underneath that. I've got a hole in the outside one. I got a thermal top. It's really snowy. You probably can't see it out through there, but welcome back. So, the first order of business, I have to make an apology. Yesterday, the second video that I made, I said if you go down the playlist and you'll see pictures of my garden. Well, I don't know what happened to that video, folks. No idea. It is not there. So, I no longer have that video, and it looks like I no longer have some of my videos, so I don't know what's going on. So what I have done is I've gone into my Facebook page and scrolled down through my photos and took snapshots and then cropped those pictures. So they'll be in this video somewhere. There's only a handful, so don't look for a whole bunch of them, okay? And I might do a voiceover too. That might be a second video. So either this video or the next video today. Look for those. For those who are interested. Somebody asked me what was my favorite egg to eat and why. My all-time favorite egg here is the guinea fowl egg. You know, they're smaller than a hen's egg, a chicken egg, but they're hard. They're really hard. You can actually toss them up and let them land on the lawn and they won't break. They're very hard. They are so rich. They just have such a good egg flavor that's definitely my preferred egg to eat. Same with my favorite on the homestead here, my favorite bird to eat is also the guinea. So, guinea is a win-win here, but they're just a pain in my butt because they're noisy and they like to roost in trees when it's warm out, and then, you know, they're basically sitting there, you know, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning because the wind come up, okay, or it started raining, and they're hollering, and the owls come right in, and the bobcat and the fox, they just draw all those predators in there, and I lose a lot of guinea, stubborn guinea that won't go in the coop at night, to owls and bobcat here. So, my least favorite egg to eat here is the goose egg. There's just something about the goose egg that I do not like. It's just, when you mash it up for like an egg salad sandwich, it's just way too creamy for me. It's just too creamy for me. But I know someone that really likes goose eggs, so they get a lot of goose eggs here, from here. I'm going to touch a little bit on sawdust, and I'm going to touch a little bit on predators. You know, I had a coyote in the yard last night. So, you know, when I put my flashlight on it, it just kind of looked at me, then it trotted off, and as far as I know, it did not come back. Coyote are normally skittish, but once when I was working very long hours and I wouldn't get home until 11:30 at night, and I left at about 5 o'clock in the morning, so that's a very long day to be away from the birds in the yard. So I would come home, and it was winter. I think it was January though, and we had a lot of snow that year. So on my what I call the chicken bridge, had 4-foot banks right on either side of it, where I just kept shoveling it off the bridge. And I went to go close I only had that one coop at that time, which I now call the guinea coop. So I went to close all the birds in there because all the birds shared that coop, and at that time all I had was guinea and chicken, folks, okay? So I walked the path out there, and I walked across the chicken bridge, checked on the birds, closed the coop up, and when I turned around, at about 16 feet from me was a coyote just standing right on top of that bank, just looking at me. Well, coyote normally don't do that. Coyote are normally very skittish. So, you know, I always have a bucket lying around here, a bucket in the coop, they're empty, or grain bag, grain bucket or something. But I had a 5-gallon bucket that I had just set inside the coop that morning. So I took that bucket and I threw it at it. But when the coyote turned around, I could see that the back end of that coyote didn't have any hair at all down along its belly when it jumped off the bank and ran away. It was basically like a quarter hairless, all on the back side. So that was probably mange. That would be my guess, mange, where they lose the hair, right? But there was something not right with that coyote, or I wouldn't have gotten that close to me. All right. So would it have done anything to me? Probably not. It was probably not feeling well. There was something really not wrong with it, and it probably wanted an easy meal inside the coop. A coyote would have to be very, very hungry to go inside a coop, folks. It's not like a fox, where a fox will go right in a coop, you know. So, and another time I was out here, and I had leather gloves, right? Because those are normally my wood hauling gloves, and because they hold up better. I reached down to grab a stick of wood, and when I did, I heard this snarling, hissing, growling, raspy noise right by my hand, folks. Well, as I was picking up that stick of wood and heard that commotion, you know, I dropped the stick of wood because it was, you know, a stick of wood is lying like this, so I grabbed it and was picking it up like this, and this part was still on the pile. So I dropped that stick of wood just to find out that I had grabbed onto the tail of a mink that was in my woodshed. So the mink went in. It had a gap in between the wood, and the mink got in there and somehow turned around and was all teeth, was snarling, and it was an awful sound, folks. It was a sound that will bring you to your. So I figured I didn't need that stick of wood, and I didn't need a stick of wood, you know, in that area. So I went and started getting the wood from another side of the woodshed here. You know, it was trapped. You know, I was on his escape route. It couldn't go further back in the wood pile, so it was trapped in a scared and trapped animal is a very dangerous one. And if you've ever seen a mink's set of teeth, they're razor sharp, like a weasel. They're razor sharp. So you got to be mindful. You got to be aware of what's around you. And sometimes, you know, when you're just going out and grabbing a stick of wood and you get a surprise like that, it makes you pay a little bit more attention. Okay. So the sawdust. Now, my stepdad has a sawmill. It's a Pedersen sawmill, portable sawmill, and that's the nicest thing. That has sawn wood lumber for several houses, folks. And what he normally saws is pine, spruce, hemlock. So that's the sawdust that I have here to use in my garden. Now, if you have access to sawdust and you want to grow potatoes, sawdust will rob plants of nitrogen, okay? And then if you're growing potatoes take a lot of nitrogen to grow, right? The plant needs a lot of nitrogen. Anything that's big and leafy, like cabbage, tomatoes, anything that has a big plant to it likes a lot of nitrogen. So you take a plant that needs a lot of nitrogen to produce a vegetable, and you take sawdust that robs that nitrogen from that plant. You need to add nitrogen. So I do not grow my potatoes with composted chicken manure. That is when, and I think that's the only time that I use chemical fertilizer, is for my growing my potatoes. Everything else gets the composted chicken manure, okay? So, but for potatoes, what you do to grow potatoes in sawdust, folks, it's very important that you follow these steps. You get your dirt, right? You work your dirt up 4 or 6 inches, whatever you want. And I'm talking about your garden dirt. And then you sprinkle your fertilizer in there. It could be 10, 10, 10 or whatever, you know. And then you put your potato in there. And then you put a little sawdust mixed in with the dirt. And you're only covering it 2 or 3 inches. And then you wait for the potatoes to sprout up through, right? And when they get up so high, you start hilling the potatoes. Well, in order to hill the potatoes with sawdust, what you need to do when it's time to hill, you take a little bit of that chemical fertilizer and you take a little bit of blood meal and you sprinkle it around the plant, not up to the plant, but around the plant, like up to 4 inches away. I have a tendency to do 2 to 3 inches away. And then you pile your sawdust right up on top of that like you normally would. So when it comes time to hill again, you do the same thing. Sprinkle a little chemical fertilizer, add some blood meal, and then you add your fertilizer, okay? Now, as far as how much blood meal and how much fertilizer, I just sprinkle it on. You don't want too much nitrogen, so too much blood meal, but you want enough. If I were to guess, I would say maybe a tablespoon sprinkled around each potato sprout of blood meal would be a good start, okay? And then you could go from where you want to with that. And probably a tablespoon. If I were to guess, I didn't ration it, I just go by eye. So maybe start with a tablespoon of, or maybe 2 teaspoons of chemical fertilizer sprinkled around each plant, to a tablespoon of blood meal. Okay, and you got to water it in, folks. You've got to water in. You don't want to put dry sawdust on there, on dry chemical fertilizer and dry blood meal, because it's just going to sit there. So probably the best I tend to do my hilling after a rain when everything is damp. So you're just gonna have to play with that. But if I were to guess, those would be my measurements that I use. So, but when it comes time, if I can ever get in my garden, I know I'm antsy. It's still February. I understand. It's but the end of February, so it's almost time to start my pepper seeds inside. If I ever get up there and start my garden, I'll go through the process for how I do things here. But by then, some of you folks mentioned that you can grow all year round. You know, by the time that I get into my garden and actually do something, it's going to be too late for you folks that live in warmer climates, because your garden season is already in progress. So that's the problem with living up here. We have such a short growing season. So thanks for coming again. Maybe look for another video. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see what's happening. But thank you so much for stopping back by. I appreciate it. The comments have been spectacular. I'm really loving the comments. Even the rude comments, I'm still liking them, because you're at least taking the time to at least tell me I suck, right? So we got broad shoulders here. So thank you so much. Bye-bye.